Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're setting sail on a journey back in time to an era of wooden ships, uncharted waters, and a thirst for discovery that would forever change the map of the world. We're talking about the late 15th century, a time when the known world felt both vast and surprisingly small. European powers, especially Portugal and Spain, were locked in a fierce race for wealth and influence. The key to everything? A direct sea route to the spice-rich lands of Asia, known as the Indies. For centuries, valuable goods like silk, spices, porcelain had traveled overland along the Silk Road. But this route was long, dangerous, and controlled by various middlemen, making the final products incredibly expensive. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 made this trade route even more difficult. So, the big question on every monarch's mind was, how can we bypass all of that and sail directly to the source? The Portuguese were making incredible progress, painstakingly charting the coast of Africa, hoping to find a way around it to reach the Indian Ocean. But one man, a tenacious and ambitious Genoese mariner named Christopher Columbus, had a radically different idea. He looked at the globe and thought, why go the long way around? The world is round, right? So if I sail west, I should eventually hit the east coast of Asia. It was a bold, even audacious proposal. Most educated people at the time already knew the Earth was a sphere. The real debate wasn't about the shape of the planet, but its size. Columbus believed the Earth was much smaller than it actually is, and he dramatically underestimated the distance between Europe and Asia. He based his calculations on a mix of sources, some of which were wildly inaccurate. He thought Japan was only about 2,400 nautical miles west of the Canary Islands. For nearly a decade, Columbus shopped his enterprise of the Indies around the royal courts of Europe. He went to Portugal, Genoa, and Venice, but was repeatedly turned down. Experts and commissions reviewed his plans and correctly pointed out that his math was wrong. The journey was simply too long, they argued. The fleet would run out of food and water long before reaching Asia. They were right, of course, but they were missing one crucial detail: a massive, unknown landmass sitting right in the middle of the ocean. Finally, Columbus found a receptive audience in Spain. Queen Isabella I and King Ferdinand II had just completed the Reconquista, unifying their kingdom. They were eager to catch up with their rival, Portugal, and saw a glimmer of potential in Columbus's high-risk, high-reward plan. After years of lobbying and persistence, they agreed to finance his expedition. It was a gamble, but one they were willing to take. They provided him with 3 ships: the flagship, a larger carrack named the Santa Maria, and 2 smaller, nimbler caravels, the Pinta and the Nina. They also granted him the titles of Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Viceroy, and Governor of any lands he might claim for Spain. On August 3, 1492, from the port of Palos de la Frontera, Columbus and his crew of about 90 men set sail. Their journey began with a stop at the Canary Islands for final repairs and supplies. Then, on September 6th, they headed into the vast, unknown expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, what sailors called the Sea of Darkness. Imagine the mix of fear and excitement. For the sailors, this was a leap into the complete unknown. Every day took them further from home than any European had ever sailed west before. Weeks turned into a month. The crew grew restless and anxious. The promised land of Asia was nowhere in sight. There were whispers of mutiny. The men feared they had sailed past the point of no return, that the winds would never carry them back to Spain. Columbus had to use all his skills as a leader to maintain morale. He reportedly kept 2 different logbooks, one with the true distance they had traveled, and a doctored one for the crew, showing a shorter distance to prevent panic. He pointed to signs of land flocks of birds, floating branches to keep their hopes alive. Then, in the early morning hours of October 12, 1492, more than 2 months after leaving Spain, a lookout aboard the Pinta named Rodrigo de Triana shouted the long-awaited words, "Tierra." Tierra land. A new chapter in world history had just begun. The land they spotted was a small island in what we now call the Bahamas. Columbus named it San Salvador, meaning Holy Savior. When Columbus and his men went ashore, they encountered the native inhabitants, the Taino people. From Columbus's own journal, we know he saw them as gentle, peaceful, and ripe for conversion to Christianity. He also immediately noted their gold ornaments, which fueled his belief that he was near the gold-rich courts of Asia. He was convinced he had landed in the Indies. So he called the people Indians, a misnomer that stuck for centuries. This first encounter was the beginning of a complex and often tragic interaction between two worlds that had developed in isolation for millennia. For the next 3 months, Columbus explored the Caribbean, sailing from island to island. He was searching for the grand cities and wealthy emperors described by Marco Polo, but instead found small villages. He charted the coasts of Cuba, which he believed was part of mainland China, and the island he named Hispaniola, which is today home to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. It was here, on Christmas Eve, that disaster struck. The Santa Maria ran aground on a reef and had to be abandoned. Using the timber from the wrecked flagship, Columbus's men built a small settlement they called La Navidad, leaving about 39 men behind to await his return. This became the very first European settlement in the Americas. With his 2 remaining ships, the Nina and the Pinta, Columbus began the long and treacherous journey back to Spain. He arrived in March 1493, not with the silks and spices he had promised, but with a few captured Taino people, some colorful parrots, strange new plants like tobacco and pineapple, and small amounts of gold. His return was a sensation. Although he hadn't found the trade route to Asia, he had found something arguably more significant: a new world, teeming with resources and people previously unknown to Europe. The news spread like wildfire, igniting an age of exploration and conquest. The Columbian Exchange had begun a massive transfer of plants, animals, culture, technology, diseases, and ideas between the Americas and the Afro-Eurasian hemisphere. Things we take for granted today, like tomatoes and potatoes in Italy, chocolate in Switzerland and chili peppers in Thailand, all made their way to the Old World from the Americas. In return, Europe brought horses, cattle, wheat, and devastatingly, diseases like smallpox and measles, which would wipe out an estimated 90% of the indigenous population. Columbus would make 3 more voyages to the Americas, exploring more of the Caribbean and touching the mainland of South and Central America. Yet he went to his grave in 1506 still believing he had reached the outskirts of Asia. He never fully grasped the true scale of his discovery. Today, the legacy of Christopher Columbus is incredibly complex and widely debated. For centuries, he was celebrated as a heroic pioneer, the brave discoverer who opened up the Americas to European settlement. But in recent decades, this narrative has been challenged. We now recognize the devastating impact his arrival had on the indigenous peoples of the Americas, marking the beginning of colonization, exploitation, and immense suffering. His story is a powerful reminder that history is often a matter of perspective. He was a man of his time, ambitious, deeply religious, and driven by a desire for wealth and glory. His journey wasn't the first time humans had crossed the Atlantic. The Vikings had landed in North America centuries earlier, but it was the one that permanently connected to hemispheres and set in motion the forces that would shape the modern world. Understanding Columbus's journey is not just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding the dawn of globalization, the collision of cultures, and the intricate, often painful web of connections that link our world today. It's a story of incredible navigational skill, profound miscalculation, and world-altering consequences. Thanks so much for watching. What are your thoughts on Columbus's legacy? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more history adventures. See you next time.